welcome to the Watering Creatives podcast. I'm your host, Allie, and joining me today is cosplayer, streamer, model, public speaker extraordinaire, Jenna Say. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my God, it's an absolute honor. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm so excited. And today we're going to be talking about how you got into cosplay and how it, kind of helps you express yourself creatively through it, and also how you kind of turned it into a little bit of a business.
You said that we only have 45 minutes, right?
I know.
Got to pack it in. It's a lot
to cover.
It's a lot to cover. So back about 8 years ago, I went to a convention and was like, actually, I take that back. It was actually a few years prior to that, like 2 years prior. I went to a convention, like met up with some people that I've never seen before, got immediately intimidated and was like, no, this ain't for me. Like I'm going to tap out right here. So like, I felt like so subpar compared to everybody else that I just didn't even want to give it a chance, which like, no, I ended up deciding that like, no, I'm going to give it a second chance. I'm going to try it. And thank God I did, because man, this has opened up a whole world to me. But I decided that next con that I was going to make my costume. I was going to like do all this crazy stuff before the con, just to like try to really immerse myself in it instead of being kind of like, oh, look at everybody looking so much cooler than me. And I kind of like concentrated more on the fun aspect of it versus like the like energy that I was putting out, which is like, oh God, I have to like be the best. And like, because my family is very competitive, very competitive. So I grew up like that. So I was like, okay, let's put the competitiveness down and like, just go be proud that I finally sewed something and go and just have a blast. And I did. And I mean, it's been a wicked roller coaster ever since. Like you said, I've pretty much tapped into every resource that I can in the cosplay community at this point, where I'm like branching out to all these different levels and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it has brought me so much joy and so much like happiness just from like deciding to give it a second chance and being like, you know what, this is that. And I mean, I sew, I fabricate, I do a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, it's been a wicked ride. Like I said, it's craziness.
And you said that was back in when did you first get involved?
I think 2014 was my first ever convention. And that's whenever I was like, no, this is too much. Like I went in, and a lot of my friends really love this story just because it's so ridiculous and over the top and it just seems correct for me. But I went in my Captain America costume that I bought from trashylingerie.com. And it's
of course. I mean, you gotta start somewhere, right?
Start somewhere. And I loved the outfit. It was like a full, like one piece, had a zipper, had a star on the front, had a corset, like a red and white corset, super cute, did pin up hair, did this and that. But I could not for the life of me find a Captain America shield. And it really bothered me. And I was like, I really want a Captain America shield. So I go to Michael's, I buy a wreath thing. And I was like, screw it. I'm just going to make this however I can. So I spray glued fabric onto it and then hand painted this, the Captain America shield logo on it. The star was janky. It was like all over the place. Whatever. I only have pictures of it. I regret throwing it away because I wish I could have kept it as a learning tool, but I was so like, oh, this thing. So ashamed of it. But I used wire to like make the handle for it. And I just went with it. And still to this day, like as much trash as I talked about that shield, I still miss that shield to this day because it like holds that, like, this is where I started. Yeah, this is where I started. And look at the freaking empire that I built from that stupid prop that I tried to make and failed so badly. But everything starts from somewhere. And that's like what a lot of people forget is like, you don't give yourself enough credit for things that you make or things that you do. And like everybody starts, from ground zero and you work your way up. I was not crafty at all. Like I could barely do anything. And I couldn't.
Surprises
So
me.
the only thing that I could do was knit, and I was not making a costume out of knitted item. That was just not, no,
You
no,
weren't going to
too much
knit
time.
a whole Captain America suit.
Yeah, no, I was not going to do that. But it's so mind blowing how far I come, because from time to time I'll do like panels about that, like from Zero to Cosplay is my starter panel, and I'll look at that photo, and every time I look at it, I'm like, wow. I'm standing next to my friend Maggie, who has a full Iron Man costume, working mechanics, lights, and I'm just like, I can't do this. And I remember that defeated feeling, and now it's just like, it's gone, like completely.
Just from like an outsider's perspective, you saying that you're like not crafty, I wouldn't believe it. Just based on, you know, everything that you do now, I like, that's hard to believe that.
Oh yeah, no, now it is. Yeah, it's absolutely hard to believe. You put me in front of a sewing machine like 12 years ago, I would have been like, for one, there's a war between us. Sewing machines and I do not get along. We hate each other. We're at war. And at some point, whenever I made my Miss Marvel costume, I guess the war ended. That was when the war of Jenna Say what versus the machines, the sewing
That's
machines
right.
specifically ended. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And also, listeners, you can't see, but in the background, Jenna has, I'm assuming, a revised version, right, of your Captain America shield hanging out in the background.
Yeah. So I have that. I just bought the Captain America shield because I was like, you know, lazy. But that's actually the one that I bought for the next con. So this has been with me since that shield. And then at some point, a friend of mine bought or had been given a old school style Captain America shield. And he was like, I'm never going to use this. Do you want it? And I was like, oh God, yes, I do. I do want this. Cool. So yeah, because I do like a pinup version of Captain America because I think it's just kind of a nice nod to it.
Also, why the hell not?
Yeah, why the hell not? Do it.
Imagine because you kind of mentioned that at your first convention, you were a little bit defeated or felt a little defeated just based on like, I'm sure the skill level there. But I imagine like the cosplay community is probably like a fairly welcoming one, kind of more community over competition. And you know, is that, I imagine it's like, even though you felt a little like,
oh yeah,
I don't want to say scared, but
I was terrified.
In my mind, I'm like, I'm sure someone helped you.
Yeah.
Take you under your wing.
Yeah. So I ended up making a lot of friends from that cosplay convention, the first one that I went to. And I just sat on those friends for a while and didn't really like talk to them or converse with them because I was like, wow, these people said that they could teach me how to do this stuff. And I don't believe them for a hot second because I can't do any of this stuff. So like I went in, 2 years later and started, that's my official start date. That was like, my first one was kind of like the toe in the water, but like the official one was like 8 years ago. And it was like so much different because everybody did want to help. I mean, and, speaking vaguely, I mean, you have some people in the community that are really, really toxic, and you have that in anything. At one point, a friend of mine said, you get enough passionate people together, there's going to be some sort of like headbutting. There's always going to be some like issues that will come out of the situation. So like, not to generalize the cosplay community, but as for the most part, I think everybody's been like absolutely phenomenal and really welcoming, and everybody's super, kind and wants to like help out. I know I'm super helpful with that kind of stuff. Whenever Birds of Prey was being filmed, and I was literally popping out every single costume as the photos were coming out, the behind the scenes photos, not even the movie stuff. For those of you that don't follow me or haven't followed that nightmare of a thing that I decided to do to myself. But like, as I was going along, I was helping other Harleys doing theirs. I was like collabing with other Harley Quinn cosplayers, being like, okay, Jen sees this. I see this though. And then like, I think it was like the club scene outfit, the bodysuit. I was like, these are the colors of the stars. And they were like, no way, it can't be. And I was spot on. It was the grainiest photo you'll ever see. Yeah. And somehow I picked out literally everything from top to bottom. And I was like, what is happening? That's I was amazing. Never, ever this observant in my life. So like it's built up all these different things in me where I'm like, okay, now I'm a little bit more visually aware of things. I can spot things. I can now deconstruct things in my head. Like it's almost like, you know, something that you'd see in like a Marvel movie where it's like my brain
Rain
just
Man.
like shows off and it's like, okay, pick this apart. This is what I can make with this. And it's just like, it's beyond. I never thought I would be that type of person that would be able to do that. And it was really just because of the practice.
That's so cool. And I bet it brings like a whole new appreciation too to like the costume design from various characters and movies and being able to sit and like watch a movie and be like, oh yeah, so we had to do this, and this. I love that type of stuff. So
and
it's so cool.
It's also helped me with like looking at props too, looking at the set design even. Like, I know I'm like one of the odd men out, but I didn't really like Squid Games. However, I appreciated every bit of that show because of like the details that they put into it and how beautifully executed everything was. So like, it's brought me to a whole different level of like enjoying things. Like most people, like some people I'm sure would pick things apart a little bit harder, like the higher up they get. Whereas the higher up I get, I'm like, wow, everybody's doing a great job. Like we're all doing fantastic. Look at what you guys created. And it just like, it makes me so proud of people that I don't even know. And I'm just like, you guys did that set design really well. Like, good job. Like, excellent work. Like,
just being able to enjoy
it kind of did the opposite to me. Rose,
were you kind of like into, I'm going to say quote unquote, quote, nerdy stuff or like movies, anime, anything like that, like prior to going to your first cosplay convention?
Yes, actually. So I grew up on comic books and like comic book like movies and stuff like that. I loved Blade. I remember watching Blade and like I remember watching like all the older like movies and stuff. I'm a Trekkie. I was a Trekkie from birth. Genetically speaking, my mother's a Trekkie, my father's a Trekkie. It was bound to happen. I can't fight the genetics here. But and it's kind of funny because like my parents later on in life told me that they used to take me to Renaissance fairs too. I was like, oh, it started that early. Okay. Like
it was subconsciously like buried in you to
and so I started to kind of like as I really got into this stuff, I started realizing like, oh yeah, I've been in nerd fandoms for a very long time. It's just that like there wasn't Facebook. I sound old, but I don't care. There wasn't Facebook. There wasn't like things like that. You had like, GeoCities websites that you could go to and be like, wow, this new comic book came out or whatever. But yeah, I used to read X-Men comics. I used to like Ninja Turtles were huge, Ghostbusters. Like I loved all the fandoms. And like, I wasn't a huge Star Wars fan and everybody's going to immediately hate me for this. And I'm okay with that. I'll die on this hill. It's fine. But since episode 1, and I was like, oh, this is great. And like, my dad was like, oh, this is the one. This is the one. And my mom's like, I didn't like Star Wars at all. And I was like, there it is. So, again, genetics.
Yeah,
I was like, not destined to be a Star Wars fan. I was destined to be a Trekkie.
I was the opposite. I was a Star Wars, raised on it.
Yep. But as I got older, I started to like appreciate everything a little bit more again with this. And now, because I cosplay a lot of Star Wars characters, I started really getting into the fandom, which I'm a little opposite of a lot of cosplayers. Like a lot of cosplayers will like cosplay things that they're like really into, like, and they don't stray from that. They're like, okay, I'm really obsessed with Scarecrow. I am, but as an example, I'm really obsessed with Scarecrow. I'm going to make every Scarecrow. But for me, I'm like, I am not a fan of this. However, I love this look. Let me dive into it. So as I'm making costumes, like whenever I was making my Twi'leks, as I was making my Twi'leks, I was researching, Ryloth. I was researching Twi'leks, like what colors do what, and like, where are they at? Like, what do they do? And all this and that. And I started really getting into it. And I was like, oh, okay. I really love Twi'leks. All right. So now I have like 5 lightsabers and 4 Leiku because that's normal. And now I'm into Star Wars. So it's like a lot of times I kind of open the door for myself like that. I wasn't I was actually kind of really scared of Scarecrow from the Arkham Asylum game. And then I made him. And now I'm just like, I already kind of liked him, but I wasn't that much into DC Comics. Whenever I started playing that video game, because I was always a Marvel girl. So like, that was always my thing. But Scarecrow's the one that kicked down the door for DC for me. And I was like, okay, Scarecrow, I'll follow you, bro. And like into the ether I went. And now I have like 60 Harleys. So, and now I know everything about all the characters because, that's normal.
No, I mean, I feel like I'm going to generalize a lot, but I feel like for creative folks, we often do that. Like we'll kind of hyper fixate on something that we really, really enjoy or a character that we're like super into. And so I feel like cosplaying is like the next step up of like appreciation for a character.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so you were kind of talking about like a little bit about how you pick your cosplays. Like it sounds like it's you kind of just find one that you really enjoy, like a character that you really like, and kind of dive in and go from there. But do you find that you're typically drawn to a typical type of character or like aesthetic, or a little bit of everything?
Mostly it's a little bit of everything. However, they always end up having some sort of character trait of myself. And I'm like, seriously, every time, really? There's always going to be something that's matching up with me. Okay. Like Scarecrow was abused heavily as a child. I was abused heavily as a child. So like I resonated with him once I started really looking into him. Like I started watching literally everything that had Scarecrow in it. I was like reading everything every day about him, like as I'm making the costume, because I was like, well, if I'm going to make the costume, I might as well like get into it. And as I started reading into him, I was like, oh my God, he's me. Like, other than the reading part, like, I'm bad at reading. But other than that, like he matched up with me really well. And I was like, wow, this character means a lot more to me than I could have ever realized. Vampires are always going to be on my list, my to-do list. I can't help myself. It is an obsession, and I will always cosplay everything vampire because I just have to. I can't help it. I did the Dracula Untold armor. Like I've done so much, and I'm just like, I can't help myself. Just
I also feel like it's like when I feel like also like the time that we were raised in, like vampires were very, very popular. Like Anne Rice, Blade, like all of that.
Yep.
Interview with the Vampire. Yeah.
It was all there. I was a big fan of Morbius growing up, like in the cartoon. And then as I got older, I started reading the comics, and now the movie's coming out. So I'm stoked about that one. Yeah. Whenever it comes out, if they, push it back again, they hate me. It was supposed to come out for my birthday one year, like 2 years ago. No, right at my birthday too. I was like, yay, birthday present taken away. COVID. Soon. How dare. But yeah, so I think you're right about that. Is like, that's kind of like our generation type thing, is like, it was a big thing back in the day. Is like, everybody wanted to be a vampire back then. So like, that was a cool thing.
I was just thinking about it. I think when I was kind of preparing to record with you, I was thinking about like what I was into as a kid when it came to this type of stuff. And I was like, vampires. Like I was really into vampires. Oh,
definitely. And I'm still goth, but like I grew up as a goth kid. And of course, like, come on, like no brainer. I was on Vampire Freaks. I was like obsessed. So, I'm not proud of those moments, but
Yeah, we all have
kids.
We all have those moments.
We do weird things.
That's right. What is one of your favorite cosplays that you've done so far?
I'm going to split it off into two. Scarecrow is always going to be number one for me. He's had a couple of variations. I've changed him up. He was my first LED attempt. So he holds a real special place in my heart. However, he's really, really in competition with Queen Castella, which is my vampire queen OC that is on TikTok. And she has touched so many people and so many hearts and lives that I get messages about her, and people come up to me at cons and stuff. I cry every single time without fail that, someone tells me that, she means a lot to them for various reasons. But yeah, I made her for KatsuCon 2018, I think, because they were doing what was it called? A Met Gala And basically their whole thing was they wanted to have you make a costume that could fit into any place. Like, so you could make like a Rick Sanchez cosplay, but like make it Met Gala. So their whole thing was, if you make an original character, just make sure that they kind of follow the rules of it looks like they could be in X, Y, and Z. And my main thing was I wanted to make a vampire queen that looks like she could literally be placed into any vampire TV show, movie, whatever. We're talking like True Blood, she would fit in easy. She would fit in with, Underworld. She would fit in with all these different places. And so that was the reason I made her. And I had seen like pictures online of like different types of like blind masks and like very grandiose, like, I don't even know how to explain how her look is, but like that specific kind of style. And she went through like a few different pattern alterations before I landed on what she looks like now. And now she has two more iterations of her outfit, which is her business look and her nighttime look. So like she's now like taken over my TikTok. I have no control over my OCs over on TikTok anymore. They all have minds of their own. I'm just along for the ride, but she's the main gal over there. And I'm very proud of what I've accomplished. I still feel weird saying it's me because I just feel like I've created the separate entity and I'm not even a part of it anymore.
I find that so fascinating because like I've spoken with some authors recently who kind of express their characters in their books like the same way. Like they just let them go and take on kind of a life of their own, and it's going to go where it's going to go, and they have no control over it. And I think that is so awesome. Like I love it, and I'm a little jealous. I'm not going to lie, because I'm like, wait, can I do that too? How do I do that?
Well, you can, because I couldn't write for my life. And now every single one of these characters have these intricate backstories that all intertwine with each other. Somehow I have created an entire world for my OCs over on TikTok. Before I couldn't do that. Literally, I couldn't do that like 5 years ago. There's no way. I would have never been able to sit down and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Casdea didn't have a backstory up until I started TikTok. And then all of a sudden ideas started hitting me and I started like going, okay, yeah. All right. This is what she does. This is how her life is. They all have full backstories. There's not one that has a single hole in their backstory. And I'm just like, I don't understand what's happening here.
Oh, it's so cool. I'm sure it's part of it's like, I imagine it's a little bit of like when you get into character, like literally into character and put on the costume and just kind of allows you to be someone else. And I don't know. It's so cool. Like I don't know. I don't have words.
I think it also spawns from a lot of my OCs on TikTok they all each have an individual quality of myself that I absolutely hate or am ashamed of. There's a couple that don't really particularly, it's not very apparent, like Darcy. Darcy is actually my SCA persona, my Society for Creative Anachronisms. She's actually my persona in that world. And I brought her into like this one and gave her like a full look. But yeah, Casdea is like my motherly instinct, which I love to like push away because I'm like, no, I don't like that part of me. I don't want to even like, I want to ignore it. And she brought it out and here it is where I have to like face this like reality of myself. So I think that that's also another reason why a lot of the characters on my OCs have now kind of like surpassed my actual cosplays where I'm like, I just want to be in my OCs all the time instead of cosplay, because they all resonate with me because they are pieces of me broken off into like different sections.
Yeah. Bringing forth like different specific personality traits that you have. That's really interesting. I feel like we could go into like the psychology behind like cosplay and just get lost.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh my gosh. What do you find is kind of the most difficult thing about cosplaying? Like, do you ever have problems letting yourself go, I guess, and getting into character, or is it typically like the fabrication?
I would say motivation sometimes is the hardest thing, because I am very neurodivergent in very different ways. And a lot of times, like, it can be very hard to get that motivation and be like, okay, I can do this. This weekend, I knew that I needed to record like 5 different characters for TikTok. And I was like, it was so, I put that on myself, but I also really wanted to do it to kind of like push myself out of that funk. And I ended up like having a blast with myself, just recording stuff and getting things done. But it's the motivation that's really a hard one. And I feel like a lot of people that want to start, you're hitting that wall of like motivation of like, well, I have to do this and this and this and this to make this costume, but I don't know where to start or how to like do X, Y, and Z. And like, it is kind of intimidating and kind of like stressful and exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. So like, there's times where I'm like, okay, I really need to get off my butt and actually do this. Like, I haven't created a cosplay in like several months. And that's very unusual for me. But like, I think I bit off way more than I could chew for like creating. Cause I was doing a commission, it ran into issues, and it just like killed my motivation entirely to where I was just like, I don't think I can make anything right now, but like, it's almost done. I'm probably going to get that shipped out soon. And then just like, then take a couple of weeks, take a little bit of a breather, and then just try again and just like, be like, okay, I got to make this stuff. But yeah, it's definitely the motivator is the hardest one.
Yeah, I definitely run into that issue a lot. Like getting motivated to do anything, whether it's creative or not. But how do you usually like break yourself out of that funk? Do you just kind of like force yourself just to start with something small, or do you have kind of like a routine that you do to get yourself going, to get creative and get stuff done?
Yeah. So pretty much I just push myself. I feel like a lot of times I kind of look at it as, because I'm really good at like, if I can picture in my head, I can start to realize that, you know, this is just temporary, I can get over it or whatever. But a lot of times whenever I just don't have that motivation, I just can't do it. I just think to myself, like, imagine me pushing a heavy cart up a hill. Like, I'm eventually going to get to the top. It's not that big of a hill, but like, once I get over that first one, then it's like, I can ride the back of the cart and just like, you know, ride over the other hills. Like,
yeah,
it's going to be okay. Like, once I just get over that one bump, then we're going to ride through and it's going to be fine. So like, yeah, it definitely helps whenever I'm like, okay, that's it. You know what? And I'll just grab the fabric. I'll grab my shears. I'll like grab my patterns, and I'm like, that's it. I'm just going to do it. Or like, I'll make something that I know how to make it really fast. So I'll be like, okay, that's it. I'm going to make a bodysuit costume because it only takes me a few hours to make a bodysuit, and just whip it out. Just get it done, get it over with. No one else probably can make a bodysuit that fast. The only reason that I can make a bodysuit in a few hours is because, one, I'm insane, and two, I've made so many at this point that it is insanity. Like, I don't know why I do the things that I do, but I digress. Bodysuits I'll always go to.
I can't.
Yeah, but you can make stuff that I can't. Like, that I'm just like, wow. But how though?
Just gonna pump out a bodysuit.
Really easy. I'm like, is it though? Like, I work with stretch fabrics really well. So if I'm in a funk, I'll just be like, screw it. I'm just gonna make like a halter top or some sort of top really fast out of stretch fabric, just so I can be like, okay, I did it. Let's do other stuff. Like, come on, let's do it. Let's rock and roll. Let's get this stuff out.
Yeah. That's good, because something I find is like, I'll sit there and I'll just be like, oh, I should really I go to guilt. I try to guilt myself into doing it, and it like really never works.
Guilt never works for me.
So I might have to try the visualizing the cart and see if that helps a little bit.
Because your cart's heavy, it sucks the first hill, but like once you're over it, you know, it's more like some downhill hills and you can just ride on the back of it and just like just go through.
That's what I tell myself. I'm always like, once I get started, I'm gonna enjoy whatever I'm doing. I just gotta get going. But you mentioned that you were like working on a commission, and that was something else that you do that I wanted to touch on, because as you mentioned, like cosplay really kind of opened up this world for you, and you're like building your cosplay empire, which includes like a ton of different things, including costume and prop design as well, or like creation, right?
Yeah.
So like tell me a little bit about that. Like, what was your first kind of I don't know, adventure, I guess, into creating for other cosplayers?
So I went on Google and got a bunch of like free, like, you know, free to use, fair use, whatever. Like just like clip arts and things like that. And like basically put together the Birds of Prey breakup scene shirt for Harley Quinn. And I was like, okay, I have an airbrush. I'm going to airbrush the stripes on. I'm going to place the stuff on the back. The first few shirts are iron-on transfers, which I still pray to God that they're still holding up for everybody, because I always worry about that. Then I kept getting orders for them. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to like, you know, start having them printed. And so I started to have them printed. And I was getting good review after good review after good review. And I was like, oh my God, like I always thought that I was not good at doing things, that no one would want what I have, or, you know, they'd look at it and be like, oh, this is hot garbage. But I ended up going from that to branching out into like actually making costumes for people. One friend of mine, who I met through like the Harley Quinn cosplay community, lives out in Vegas. And she was like, can you make me, because she does pinup, and she's like, can you make me a pinup style version of the gold overalls for Birds of Prey? I was like, oh God, yes, I can. So like I ended up making that. Then I one of the artists for Birds of Prey that created the overalls, he actually had made a secondary type of overall, and it was red and black. And I was like, oh my God, I have to have those. So I immediately grabbed patterns, started making them. And that was like the first time I ever like put in pockets every single time with those. But yeah, I made those overalls for a few people. And so, and of course they have pockets deep enough for your phone, which is excellent. Right. I don't even have to walk around with a purse. It's great.
You can't go wrong with good pockets.
Oh God. Whenever I did that, I felt like the biggest genius in the world, because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to put pockets in this. And I just did. And then I started to realize, oh, I can put pockets in everything. So like everything I sew, if it's not like skin tight on me, I'm like pockets immediately. Yeah. Pockets. But it was terrifying. I'm not going to lie. Like people that start their own business, that is the most terrifying thing in the whole wide world. Like I was lucky to have like a support system to do that. And I had my full-time job as well. So I kind of juggled a lot, and I still do. I still juggle a lot because I still work full-time. It's not like Jenna Say what can support me 100%, which I'm okay with. But yeah, it's been crazy. It's been really, really crazy. But yeah, I still have really good reviews on my shop. I've never had any complaints other than shipping issues overseas, which I'm sure anyone that sells overseas can absolutely nod their head in agreement on that one. But yeah, it's been really, really cool to like be able to tap into that part of myself that I had previously been really self-conscious about. And now I'm not. Now I'm like, okay, I can make stuff for other people. This is cool.
Love it so much. It just makes me sound like I get so much enjoyment just from listening to you talk about your journey, because it's just like, it's just, I don't know. I want to say it's like a really unique kind of journey through creativity, from like enjoying something as a kid and like really being into comic books and that aspect of stuff. And then finding your way into kind of expressing that love for that through your creativity, which is, you know, through cosplay. And I mean, when we talk about cosplay, we're talking like you have character development, you've got costume, creation, fabrication, makeup, like you were saying, like backstories, everything. So I mean, you're like tapping into a wide variety of creativity to like bring these characters to life. And I think it's just such a amazing thing to be able to do. It's just so
Thank
cool.
you.
So
Thank
cool.
you.
Oh, I love it so much. And like you were saying too, like it's opened, right? You've got like your cosplay, you do panels on cosplay. Like I think some of it's like a lot of it's like kind of educational type stuff, right? Like how to become a cosplayer and how to get started.
I do cosplay 101, body paint 101, which is a big one. Wig styling, which I call wigging out. Nice. Tap back into the 90s, like you wigging. Like I had to do it. I had no choice.
Perfect.
My hands were tied.
How could you not?
Yeah, I do now a TikTok panel, a TikTok how-to kind of panel, like discovering your characters, like doing that. Like the next time I do that panel, it's going to be a lot more. I think it's going to be a lot better because like the first time I did it, that was like the inaugural journey of that. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely been a wicked ride where I have like, I love teaching. So like doing those panels, I love it because I love teaching people and seeing the light hit them where they're like, mm-hmm. Oh, like it's like that aha moment, but I get to see it across other people's faces. And I'm just like, this is great. I love it. I love doing this.
Do you have, I guess, any advice when it comes to people who are maybe like dipping their toe into the cosplay kind of realm or are just getting started? Like, do you have any advice for the new folks?
Yeah. So basically and you're going to hear every cosplayer just echo, it's going to be an echo chamber to you, but just go for it. If you are uncomfortable with like, say you want to do the Suicide Squad Harley, but you are not into the booty short situation, go with pants. Mm-hmm. Like change things up. If there's certain things about a character that make you uncomfortable in your own skin, change it up. Like one thing that I was taught at the very beginning, thank God for this, but always go with the rule of 3. So you have 3 things that a character has that are very symbolic to themselves. Riddler, green, cane, question marks, done. Yeah. I was literally in a dress that I got from a con that was like the Riddler pattern. And I had an orange wig on and I was literally going to set up my booth. That was the only thing I was doing that day. And I got several pictures of me in that. And I was like, but this isn't okay, sure. Like I was just kind of going theme wise and people were like, oh, Riddler. And I was like, oh, okay. So unintentional Riddler cosplay. But yeah, rule of 3. So if you don't have the money, if you do not have, the time to make something, or you don't know how to start it, but you want to go to a con, just go into your closet, find some stuff, or go to a thrift store. Highly recommend thrift stores because, you're also, not creating extra waste. But then on top of that, you're also getting things for cheap. You can trash them. You can if you want to, make them gritty, you can, use paints and you can do all this and that. And you can use acrylic paints on fabrics to rough them up and give them a little extra grunge to them. Or, if you're going to do a scarier costume or whatever, but don't let other people's choices and their standards kill your vibes. Just be, just get whatever you can and just go to a convention, just hang out with people. Cause you walk up to someone that's in a Naruto cosplay and you love that show, go up to them and be like, man, I love this cosplay. I love this part of this character, blah, 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 blah. What people don't realize going into it is these are conversation starters. Mm-hmm. These cosplays are just conversation starters. They're beacons to basically say, hey, I'm obsessed with Harley Quinn. Come talk to me about Harley Quinn, please.
Yeah, let's fangirl this character.
Yeah, let's fangirl. If I don't know your costume and it looks insanely great, I'm just going to run up to it and just be like, oh my God. And it's like kids too. Like I'll run up to kids and their parents. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they're like, oh, she made it. And I'm like, what? Excuse me. There was a little girl at a convention that I was judging for, and she had taken a like mini, or like an old, I guess, computer monitor and like gutted it, put like flowers and like moss and stuff all over it, and created this whole character around this look.
Wow.
And I went up to her and I was like, I love this. What is this from? She goes, oh, it's my original character. I was like, it looks incredible. And I looked at her parents and I was like, do you mind if I get a picture of her? And they were like, absolutely. And me and the parents and her were all talking. And I was like, thank you. And I looked at the parents. I was like, thank you so much for supporting her, because there are a lot of parents that don't support this kind of stuff, or, that they can't support this kind of thing. And it's really awesome that you are. So kudos to you guys. So like, I always try to like run up to people and let them know that their costume is awesome. But yeah, don't let something stop you, because this little girl, I think that was her first costume, and she ended up winning one of the competitions for, I think it was one of the judges awards. I think it was mine actually, but but she ended up winning a competition because like the thought behind it and the execution of the costume was beautiful. It was very well done, especially for a child that is doing this. Like impressive work. Yeah. So don't let something stop you. Don't let another person stop you from ruining your time. Like there's going to be people out there that are going to like, spit fire at you. Don't let them. Just let it run off your back. Know that you are happy. And a lot of times the people that are spitting fire at you are just really sad themselves, and they're having a rough time and they're lashing out. And you just happen to be the person that they decided to. Kindness is pivotal in those kinds of things. Just be like, man, that's your thought. Sorry, bro. Like, and just walk away. Know that you are on your own path and they're possibly not in a good place, and just shrug it off and be like, no, I'm happy. I love the way I look. I love what I'm doing. They're just spitting fire and I'm going to dodge it. Plain simple.
I feel like that is just good life advice in general to carry with you.
And don't get me wrong, it's hard as hell to like get that mindset going. Trust me, it's going to be a while before you like get it down pat, and you will cry in the bathroom. I do it all the time. But like, don't get me wrong, it's not easy. However, once you've achieved that level of being like, nah, bro, not today. Like, it's incredible. It's like such a mood changer.
Oh, I think one of the things I enjoy so much about cosplay, and this, I might just be reiterating what I said earlier in a different way, but it is like the embodiment and like physical representation of somebody's creativity.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I enjoy so much about it is that people can express themselves through this way. It's, because it's different than like art, like traditional art.
Yes.
I'll say. So I think that's what I enjoy so much about it.
Yeah. And the thing is like, we all have that creative energy in us. That's just that if you can if you have the ability to tap into it, everybody has the ability. It's just like, funds. I'm talking about like outside forces as far as that goes, but like your inside force, man, you got it in you. It's just, you have to tap into it. You have to like, it's like having a ball of clay and you have to turn it into something. No, it's not going to be great right away. You have to sit there and like trial and error and sculpt and do this and that. And like, I always tell people, anytime that I'm on podcasts, anytime that I'm online, whatever, like if you need help, reach out to me. Like I'm always down to help. Like, I may not get to the messages right away because I do all of my social media, and it can be very, very struggle bus when it comes to me getting back to everyone like in a good time, but
insanely busy as well. So
but please message me. Don't like just hang up the cosplay before you even make it. Like message me, ask me, because like I've done so much at this point that I probably have the knowledge. And if I don't, I have a friend that does. Yeah, I'll point you in the right direction.
On that note, where can people reach out to you?
Yes. So one good place that's super easy is jennasaywhat.com. Boom. Done and done. All of my social media links are on there. But basically at this point, which I'm not entirely sure, because I did Google myself the other day on hidden, and I like, it's just, it all pops up right there. So,
Nice.
but Jenna Say What on TikTok, Jenna Say What on everything. Sometimes there's underscores. TikTok is all one word. Twitter Twitter's all one word. And I think, and also my Twitch is all one word. Jenna Say What, just boom.
You do a lot of like live streams and various things.
Yeah, I Twitch stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I always try to go live on TikTok during those days too. Because like sometimes my Twitch stream isn't as chatty as my like TikTok and vice versa. So like I at least have like something going on at all times. Nice. But yeah, I always try to do stuff like that. And worst case scenario, if you have a question and I can't like explain it well enough, like I've sent videos to people. Oh, nice. I've Google Drive video, like 3-minute videos, and sent it to them. Been like, here you go.
So yeah, I bet that is insanely helpful for people.
I try. I'm just happy to help. I'm just stoked to like be a part of something. I'm like a golden retriever. I'm just really stoked all the time just to be there.
Is there anything that you're currently working on that you can share with the listeners? Do you have any new maybe like cosplays coming up or conventions?
So convention wise, I think my next one for sure is going to be Galaxy Con in Raleigh NC at the end of July, which is my birthday weekend. Yay, it's my birthday con. I love it. And I always go to Dragon Con. As far as costumes go, there's a few that I'm kind of working on. I'm actually working on Crystal from Inhumans. I'm going to start working on a Medusa as well from Inhumans. I was a fan of the show, but I grew up on the Inhumans, and I was very sad at how dirty they were done. But yeah, for the most part, those are the two that I'm kind of working on. I'm possibly, I have the fabric for a Goblin Queen from Marvel. So yeah. So I'm going to end up doing a couple of things, and I think she's Marvel. Oh, great. Now I'm blanking. I'm pretty sure she's Marvel. Everybody's like, Jen's street cred is now taken away. Girl, you're done. Hang it up. I'm like, oh man, you know what? You can take the card. It's fine. You can take the card. Cause like, I just want to make that costume so bad.
Yeah.
Like every time I see her, I'm like, I just want to make it. It's so pretty.
Oh my gosh, so much fun. I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And I know it was a quick conversation, and I feel like we could have like really talked about any of these one things for hours probably. But yeah, I cannot thank you enough for kind of sharing your story about how you got into cosplay and what that whole journey has been like. And like Jenna said, you can find her on Instagram, TikTok, her website, and I will share all that in the episode description. So I'll make it even easier for listeners to find her. And yeah, Jenna, any final words?
Just get out there and cosplay, guys. Yes. Don't let anxiety hold you back. It's already kept you prisoner enough. Time to break those shackles.
And that's it. That's the episode. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the episode today. If you have questions for me or for any of my guests, including Jenna, you can send me a message or leave me a voice message on our hotline, 252-419-6004, and we will include them on a future episode of the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Wandering Creatives Pod. Be sure to like, rate, and review. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wandering Creatives Podcast, a CEI media production. Please like, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast as it helps us greatly. You can follow us on Instagram at Wandering Creatives Pod and on Facebook at Wandering Creatives Podcast. If you would like to support the podcast, you can become a Patreon for just $5 a month. The link is in the episode description.
That's it.
That's awesome.
Amazing.